What's up, YouTube? I'm gonna try to repair this bumper today. I generally don't do any kind of body work, so I figure I'll try to catch it on film. Hopefully it goes well. If the video gets posted, then that means it went well. And here I'm starting off by removing the clips on the grill. And there are a few at the bottom. You just need a flathead screwdriver. Get in there, pry it off. Once you get it loose, you could pretty much take it out by hand after that. That's generally identical setup on both sides. Once you take one side off, you follow the tabs all around the bumper, take those off. And here, there's a little pin in the middle. You push on that, use a flathead to get the clip loose. Then I'm using a body panel tool. I'm just going to pop that out. Makes the job nice and easy. And once you double check that all the tabs are removed, you just want to pull on the bumper one end. It's going to be a little tight, but just pry it out. You're going to hear some snap, but it's not going to break. And you do that on both sides. Got to take this other clip out. Once that's off, just pry it off. And from here, you could pull the bumper off. Just be careful and check all wiring and light connectors. Just make sure everything is unplugged. The fog light housing is held on by two bolts, two 10mm bolts, and two clips. And you can see the housing is broken. Get the second one off. And then from here, I'm just going to use my flathead screwdriver, pop the tab out, go to the other side, get the other one out. That's what they look like. Once I got that off, take the housing, put that aside. And here's the damage from the inside. And the bumper is kind of rigid, so it's kind of hard to get it back in shape. I'm pushing on it, but it's not really forming the shape, so I'm just going to use my heat gun to soften it up just a little bit. That way it's easier to work with. The heat gun set on low, and I'm holding it about 6 to 8 inches away, creating enough space. That way too much heat does not focus on one spot and melt the bumper. And as you can see, I'm moving it around constantly and not just holding it to one spot. And I'm just going to use some rubbing alcohol to clean the surface up before I continue. Then I'm just gonna Go over it with some sandpaper, scuff the surface up a little bit, right where the cracks are. Just make sure I get that nice and scuffed up. Not sure what grit I'm using. I believe it might be 80, but I'm pretty much just using what I have. I'm gonna go over it again with some more rubbing alcohol. Make sure it's nice and clean before I apply my plastic weld. Now, as I was prepping the main damage, I noticed there's another damaged area on the bumper. So I'm just gonna go ahead and take care of that also. And here I'm just using some more sandpaper to clean that up. Then I'll wipe it down with some rubbing alcohol. And I'm going to be using a plastic welding kit that I purchased from Harbor Freight. Here you see the packaging it came in. That's the item number. Hopefully that picks up on camera. So after letting my plastic welder sit for about 5 minutes to heat up, what I'm doing here, I'm just gonna hold it on the plastic, and once it starts melting, I'll drag it and smear it over the crack. And while I'm doing that, I also place my other hand on the opposite side. That way I could feel the heat to have an idea if I'm holding it in one spot too long. I'm just gonna cover all the cracks, all the little openings, and once that's done and it's cooled, it'll actually hold it in place. Now here I'm using one of the plastic welding rods that came with the kit, and I'm just pretty much melting it over the wider gaps, areas where the cracks are a little more wide. I just melt it over that, and other areas that I'd like a little extra coverage, I'll just add a little extra to that also. Now once I'm done with that step, I'll just kind of shake it a little bit, push on it, and I'm using a pretty decent amount of force just to make sure it's sturdy. Now I'm just using my Dremel tool to knock down all the high spots that were left from the plastic welding. Doing this part is not really necessary, but I just wanted to have a flat as possible surface before I move on to the next step. I'm going to use the wire mesh that came with the kit, and I also have some tin snips that I'm going to use to cut it to shape. Once it's cut to size, then I'll use the plastic welding tool, and I'll just hold it on there for a little while. Once the plastic starts melting, then I could move it and tack another spot, and I'll just do this and go all around until I have the wire mesh fully secured. And for certain areas that are hard to reach, I'm just using the handle of the wire brush to push on the mesh once I heat up the plastic under it, and that way it'll just stay in place. You could see much better here. I'm heating up the wire mesh. Once it gets hot enough, then I'll use the handle of the wire brush to hold it, and once the plastic cools, it stays right in place. I could try to cover as much of the surface as I can with the welding rod, but that's not going to be necessary, as I'm going to use a glue over it once I'm done. And as you can see here, this is pretty much how I'm going to leave it. I have it intact. It's nice and sturdy. I repaired the fog light housing off camera. I found all the broken pieces. I match them up, used my plastic weld, and put all that back together. And now I just gotta add some of the two-part glue that I'm gonna be using and cover all the welded area just to firm it up a little bit more. And here I'm gonna be using the JB Weld plastic weld two-part epoxy. So I'm just gonna mix that up, and it's a 5-minute epoxy, so I gotta work pretty fast with it. So once I mix that up, I'm gonna be applying it all over the wire mesh and the area that was damaged. I'm just gonna smear that on, then I use an applicator to cover the whole thing, give it a nice and even coat. Now I just gotta apply some of that same epoxy to the fog light, the housing. So all the areas that I use my welding kit to repair, I'm just applying some of that epoxy. Once I was done applying all the epoxy and the wire mesh and all of that, I let it sit overnight, dry, maybe 12 hours. And here you can see I taped off the fog light opening, and I'm just using some Rust-Oleum plastic spray just to cover the wire mesh. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. I tried to be as detailed as I could. If you did like it, please give it a thumbs up, and please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.